Hey, welcome to this week's episode of The Green Room. Man, we are so glad you're joining us. We're wrapping up the Balance series. And hey, this week in the bulletin, you got a small group insert. If you can add anyone to your small group, be sure to show up next week. We got a Connect event, and we can get some folks plugged in your group. And now I want to kick it over to Pastor Bryan with the Y filled in today. And we got Roger also joining us from the money management team. So, hey, let's give those guys a hand.
All right.
All right. So,
how about how there's 61 people in FBU right now?
That is outstanding.
Is that crazy or what?
That's outstanding.
61 in this series have signed up for and
I
are
think it
taking
just keeps
FBU.
growing and growing because, I mean, we're putting it out there. People are seeing the difference it's making in their lives, and the word is spreading like a brush fire. So,
Yeah.
loving it.
I had a friend of mine who's attending with us who's actually an accountant, CPA, very well known in the area. Nice. And she even is taking it. She says, I probably know this stuff, but she says, I just feel like I should do it. And I said, yeah, you probably could teach it.
yeah.
So that's just cool to see everybody taking next steps. And, you know, Pastor Bryan's done a great message throughout all these series, I think, just really challenging us all to really look at, you know, our finances. And, you know, I didn't realize for so long how much stress that stuff causes, Roger. You know what I mean? When it's out of whack, when we don't have focus, when we don't correct it, and we don't have an objective, it really gets scary, doesn't it?
It definitely does, yeah.
Yeah.
For all of us. I mean, we've all been there.
Yeah. You made me think with the CPA, a lot of times we just need to be reminded of these principles. It's not like anything, you know, new that's like real. I mean, sometimes it is, but, you know, we just, we're never static in our finances, probably a lot like our walk. We're never static. We're either, you know, making advancement or we're kind of sliding a little bit. So
Yeah.
it's really good to kind of.
Well, I think that would be a misconception to think that a CPA, because they don't teach necessarily the finances about how to manage your money. They're good with the numbers and helping you to do taxes and stuff like that. But when it comes down to God's principles and what God says you should do with your money, I would never assume that everybody has that all together.
No.
Until they actually go through something like Financial Peace University.
Yeah, because that really unpacks it, doesn't it?
It definitely does.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dave Ramsey puts it in such simple terms that I think anybody could understand it. So anybody could benefit, whether you're married or if you're just a single individual. There's a lot of good lessons in there.
Yeah.
I would almost say one of the biggest areas for discipleship is discipline. Is really kind of pulling your finances in order. And I think that's why a lot of times in our walk, that's one of the last things to come is the finances. I remember seeing this little cartoon one time and a guy was getting baptized and his arm was sticking out of the water with his wallet. And it was like, man, that's really symbolic of a lot of times where, you know, when you really do turn your life over to the Lord, that's one of those things that comes in later.
Sure, definitely.
Well, and that's why I love what Pastor Bryan said, and I said it again today about, you know, you need to know where your money's going. You need to be knowing where your money's going, and I think that just tracking that has been. I did it basic years ago. Like I put every receipt in a bowl in the kitchen sink. You know, because that might have been, I don't know if I saw that from Ramsey or not, but I was challenged to like keep your receipts for 2 weeks, put them in a bowl, and then you and me and Heather, we went over them. And, and you know, it's painful, right? Because, you know, we don't think about it, especially today, using debit cards, it's like mindless, you know? And we went through all these receipts and we're like, this is why we can't pay the electric bill. We spent $478 going out and dinner. And you don't think about it at $20 a pop, or, you know, like I said today, $5 Red Bull, that doesn't seem that big a deal. But check it out, 7 days a week, that's $35 a week, times 4 is what, Roger? You're the math guy,
$140.
Yes, see? That's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, you know, Pastor Gary was talking a few weeks ago, and he was talking about the Disney Plus, and he goes, "Oh, it's only $6 a month," and then he said, "Oh, and I'll add on Hulu. It's only $4 more," and that sort of thing. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and they were actually talking about that's a marketing strategy that companies are using today to get you kind of hooked on it, like $10 Planet Fitness and that sort of thing. Not that all these things aren't bad, but they're guaranteeing that you're not going to use their service. Because if you use their service, then they're going to go out of business because it'd just be too much to manage. But they want you to kind of get hooked on it, and then what you'll do, you'll justify it next month by going, hey, I may go to the gym once or twice or whatever. I'll go ahead and you know, go another month at $10. But what they're doing is they're actually getting you hooked, and they know the mindset will continue to have you.
Well, they know the majority of people won't go. So like you said, so if you're not using it, I mean, and then they're thinking, well, it's only $10.
Yeah.
But it's the minnows. It's the minnows that eat away at your money consistently. And before you know it, I mean, I always say like, so for debt, interest is that thief in the night. So while you're sleeping, you're losing money.
Wow.
You're paying that extra. So it's just all those little minnows that just eat away and that you really don't realize where it's all going. So it's amazing.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and I think that's why I love, that the Bible speaks to this, and in a way that just I think is encouraging. God invites us to have Him part of this part of our lives, and then promises, as we talked about today, to take care of us when we do. And I think that's the tough part. We get worrying and we get thinking about, well, if I don't take care of myself, who will? And God, I think, is just God's got to have a great sense of humor, right? Because He's got to be up there like saying,
Yeah.
And I heard Craig Rochelle say one time, he said, I know you think that God's like that dinosaur with those short arms. I can't help you,
High five.
Yeah, right. But God is so willing and able, and actually promises us if we reprioritize how we spend our money and how we deal with our money, that He'll get involved and He'll help us with that. And I was telling Pastor Bryan yesterday, because he called me when he asked me to preach, and he was like, we were bouncing a couple things. He could barely talk, but I love him to death. He was like, hey, you good on this? And I'm like, yeah, I'm good, And but I was just sharing it with him. Even when I was in business, I didn't handle my finances the way I should. And I have so much more peace and joy by living the way that God wants us to us, by Him first, me second, and then live on what's left. And the joy that comes from that, the peace. But I guess you just don't know it until you do it. That's the thing, because if you never take the step to do it, then you live in the what if, don't you? What's going to happen if I do it? What will I give up? And I think that's where that's the roadblock for people, is like, I'm going to have to give up some stuff, but not realizing that they're already giving up something. You're giving up your peace, you're giving up your joy, because the stress and the burden that comes with all that stuff.
Yeah. Well, they don't realize, I think a lot of times, it's a pride thing, right? I worked hard for this money and I deserve this, whatever it is, the next greatest thing, the next greatest phone, that comes out, $1,500 to $2,000 a pop for these things.
Yeah.
And so they get caught up in, well, I work hard, I work hard for my money, so they, the whole thing, they're going to just spend it, but they don't realize that, like you said, what they're giving up that peace of mind.
Yeah.
So
one of the things you said today was, and this is what's hard for some people as well, is like your lifestyle may have to change.
Yeah.
And it really is for you to come to terms with that. Pastor Bryan shared this before, but one of the things he said is when he went from a bivocational pastor to a full-time pastor, there was a lot of things that had to change. And he said, man, it was like a 50% pay cut, but he knew God was calling him into full-time ministry and that sort of thing to be able to advance the church. And now here we are years later with the benefit of, God, blessing that calling.
Sure.
And he goes, but man, it was tough. It was tough, like a 50% pay cut. I think that you're going to have to correct me if that's not right. But I know it was pretty significant to where, changing their kids' schools and that sort of thing, to where just adjusting was tough.
Yeah.
But, I mean, God showed His provision, and, look at us here. But
well, and then I think you realize, for me, what I had to ask myself the tough questions is, hey, why do I think I need these things, more than what I really needed? I mean, there was a time, don't pass out, okay? But I mean, there was a time, I think back when I was in business, I had $3,000 a month in car payments. Can you imagine that? I mean,
woozy.
This was a long time ago, but right? And I thought I needed, first of all, I'm one person. Why do I need 3 cars, Roger?
No idea.
But
it's that pride thing I was talking about.
Well, and Celebrate Recovery helps with this. But I realized that I was trying to, fill a void. I was trying to, if I had everything that made me look successful, that maybe I'll feel successful, I'll feel better about myself.
Sure.
And what a lie. I mean, I'd love to have that money now.
yeah.
All that, because I don't have it. It's gone.
Yeah.
The cars are gone. The money's gone. And
well, you probably justified, it's a write-off.
yeah, there you go. To all of us business people, we love to do that, don't we, Roger?
Well, I get to write it off, but
Yeah.
it's gone.
Yeah.
Period. That money's gone. So.
Yeah.
So that's like, I had a guy one time telling me he wanted to keep his mortgage because it was a write-off on taxes.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm like,
How do you do that one?
Is that
oh,
logic?
personally, yeah.
Yeah.
So he can itemize. So, I'm like, what? How?
But to not have a mortgage is more peace of mind.
Yes, that would be the better thing,
Yeah.
right?
But anyway.
Roger, how do you, we talked about today, hey, to reprioritize our list, God first, save second, live on the rest, on what's left. Should people just jump right into that? I mean, is this a Band-Aid thing, or you just rip the Band-Aid off and just start tomorrow and do it? Or, I mean, is that realistic, or what do you recommend to people on that? Should they?
Honestly, I recommend going to Financial Peace University.
Okay.
I really do recommend that because you're going to find out, why should I do these things, or what kind of impact? Because you're around all these other people that have done it. Yeah. So I've always believed that when there's those testimonies, it makes it more impactful to you.
Yeah.
So first step, I would just say sign up for Financial Peace University. Not trying to just plug that in there, but it will make a big difference in your life, because when you can change your perception of it and not think, oh my God, my life is going to totally change and I'm not going to be doing this, this, and this, then you can kind of say, wow, I'm going to change my life so later I can do those things that if I don't save and live in that order, I'm not going to be able to do those things later. Yeah. And we talked about this a little while ago. Like when I sit down with husband and wives to kind of go over, and doesn't say marriage counseling on the door. So there's some times where I have to remind them when they kind of get at each other a little bit. But when they can get on the same page, so if you're married, Financial Peace University, do it as a couple. Don't try to go back home and say, hey, this is what I learned. So it's very important for couples to get on the same page financially, because one is handling the bills and the other one says, I have no idea. So I said, well, what happens if your spouse passes away? Do you know what needs to happen? And inevitably, they're like, I have no clue.
Yeah.
They have no clue. So all this, just to say that going to a class like Financial Peace University could help you to do the proper prioritizing in your life.
Shows you the bigger picture.
The bigger picture, that 30,000.
Because you're right, you got to know the why before the what.
Exactly.
What do people do though? Because right now we're in the midst of FPU, right? So they'll have to wait. Is there something they can do? Like, can you go on Financial Peace? Is there a website? I mean, what can they do between when the next
There's
class
other
runs?
financial classes that they can do. Actually, there's other help that they can do. We have a finance ministry, so they can call into the church, get a phone call.
That's good.
We'll give them a call. We'll sit down with them and kind of walk through that process with them.
Yeah, we'd love to have you do that. If you didn't get on this round of FPU, like call the church office. We'd love to try to connect you with these guys that can help you with that.
Yeah, and check out last week's episode, because Michelle was one of the ones that will sit down and kind of go over your budget. And a lot of times it really helps to get external eyes, because what's going to happen is they don't have emotion attached to any of these line items. So they can really, really kind of look over your budget, and some things that you think are a priority and I can't live without, they're going to be like, hey, you don't need HBO every month. You don't need an unlimited data plan. You could, just these are some examples to where maybe you think it's a need, but it's just maybe, something to where you could save some money. So these guys could really help with that.
I will make another suggestion on that too. You talked about like tracking for 30 days. And I mentioned before is because, when I sit down with people and I say, okay, here's what you told me that you spend money on every month, right? And then I say, okay, well, let me ask you a question. Is your checking account, because when I look at that, it looks like they should have a lot of money left over. So I said, is your checking account growing, staying the same, or shrinking? And most of the time they're like, it just seems like there's never any money. I said, well, then this is not accurate. You told me these things, okay, your average electric bill, all these things, what you spend money on groceries and all that stuff. But when I see another $1,000 a month or $500 a month or whatever that should be growing your checking account, but you're saying it's not there, that means there's something else that you're spending money on. So track that for 30 days. It's the Wawa coffee.
Yes.
I'm guilty of. It's the going out to lunch. Oh man, I'm just doing that a couple times a week. It's the things that you really don't think about.
Yeah, and you look later at the end of the year and it's like $7,500 in eating.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? Like, that's the line item, right?
You justify it, I'm spending time with this person or whatever like that, but man, you could go for a walk and, not spend any money.
Free.
And I thought for sure when me and you go to lunch, you would pay. I didn't.
I know. I seem to always forget my wallet. That's hilarious. Hey, I did have a question come in today, and I want to kind of get this out there. it says, we keep preaching that if our heart isn't completely right with tithing, it's best to not give because he won't receive the full blessing. And I know we mentioned that as well in third base. God wants, a cheerful giver and a willing heart. But isn't it more important to be obedient and give until we see the blessing coming out of our obedience?
That's a good question. Isn't it more important to be obedient? So I think what this person's saying, I guess, is that, are they saying, even if I'm not happy, shouldn't I still go do it? Is that what they're saying? Because I should be obedient whether I'm happy about it or not?
Yeah, that's kind of the way I read it.
Well, hey, there's certainly, I don't think anything wrong with that. I think God honors obedience. Here's the thing with me. I needed God to change my heart so that I did enjoy doing it. Because I've never did anything just out of obedience. Usually I know I should go to the gym and I might go for a little while, but I don't go very long because I really don't want to do it. So yeah, no, I don't think you could go wrong with doing this out of obedience. I mean, I think there's a step of faith, to say, God, this doesn't make sense. I really don't even want to do it, but I'm going to do it anyway. Does God honor that? Of course he does, because, we're called, to Jesus says, hey, if you love me, you'll obey me.
Yeah.
Right? So, I mean, there's this, and that's the problem, is that sometimes, we love God, but we don't really listen to God, and that's the thing. And I mean, I know my kids love me, but boy, it was frustrating when they didn't listen to me. Like, why won't they clean their bedroom? And it didn't change my love for them, but it did change what I would do for them to some extent, because I'm a father, and I want to show them discipline, and I want to show them, what it means to do what you're supposed to do. So I don't know if I answered that, but I think you could be fine to do it out of obedience. But just know that the law never worked a whole lot with people, know. So if you're doing it begrudgingly, I think, unfortunately, you'd find it would be the first thing to be cut off your list.
I would say that's, again, the 90-day tithe challenge would be their next step, because, they're starting off in obedience, but we know it takes, a little while before you create a habit.
Yeah.
So it's still in that habit, just like exercising. You might not feel like going to the gym, but when you go, man, thank God I went.
Once you get a habit.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's the same thing, I think, also by giving. Once you start doing that and you start seeing, what God can do in your life, then it's not such a a struggle to do that. You just, man, I want to do that more,
Yeah, and I think that's what God was saying in Malachi. It was all about obedience there. It's like, hey, you're not being obedient to me. You're not listening. You're not, doing what I've, told you to do, encouraged you to do, and challenged you to do. And so they were missing out. And I think the same is true today. I mean, I just, we don't, like I said, it's. I don't have a problem asking for God to help me out or bail me out, but I never invite him into how I spend it, and and I think that's the problem. And I just don't think, I mean, he's not an ATM machine, we just, hey God, give me this, and I just we want to minimize, I think, sometimes who God is, and like kind of, I don't know, this is the right thing, but I think we play God. I don't mean we play God like we play him for a fool. It's like, oh, God, I'll do this part, but not anymore. And God's like, oh, okay.
And we're the fools.
Like God's a people pleaser, like he's going to say, well, I don't want you to leave, so I'll go ahead and, no, I don't think God can bless disobedience. I mean, I don't know
it's
how that
easy to
would work.
climb on that throne when things are going good, because we feel like we've gotten ourselves there.
Yeah.
But man, when we hit dire straits, it's like, it's the
Yeah.
reminder to turn to him.
I tell you, when Heather and I put him first, and we follow the Ramsey model. I mean, like it goes out first. I mean, and I don't know if this is right or if he says this, but it's like a bill. So I mean, I don't entertain whether I can spend it, because it's got to go. It's got to be paid. And when we did that, it was like, and plus we do it on the app. We have one where we give there, and it's up on routine, or not routine. That's not the
Bill
word.
pay.
Bill pay. So it's reoccurring. That's the word I'm looking for. And man, it helped us live without it. So we don't live as based on what our giving is, because we know that goes out first. And our life has just been blessed. I'm not the kind of guy that says, Friday at 4. Well, which one am I going to do? I'm like, I'll usually keep it for myself. So it's just been easier to put it on reoccurring for me.
Well, I tell you, as we wrap up the financial series, I just think it's really good to, as we start implementing some of these principles. I love what Dave Ramsey said when, Murphy Law kind of happens to you. Life's not predictable. And so when you can start getting some financial freedom and you start realizing that, man, when life broadsides you, and we were talking about this before the camera started rolling, and you have some flexibility to where you're able to then kind of, put some money towards that or whatever like that. I just on the way in this morning, it's just a reminder. There was a house completely burnt down. They lost everything. And it just jarred me when I rode by it that, gosh, what would happen if like that happened to me?
Yeah.
Well, what would be my first steps? And I know you got insurance and that sort of thing, but you're going to need to be able to have some resources to be able to get to that. So it's like, could happen at any given time. And man, if you're strapped and you don't have that freedom, it's going to be really, really difficult.
Yeah, and just know we're here to help. So, reach out to us, call the office. We can get you connected with these guys. And because we want you to have the freedom that God wants you to have. And I think this is what I would just say is that, think about this, give first, save second, live on what's left. And I think it's a great thing to ask as a small group, hey, where are you at on that? What's keeping you, from doing that? And as a group, how can you help each other, move in that direction? Because if you do, your life's just going to be completely different.
Yeah. So as we kind of land the plane, I just shared this with a host this morning. Many times in our faith, how God speaks is through our faith is through other people and other believers. And so be willing to share that and be transparent with one another, because a lot of times iron sharpens iron, and that really kind of moves us forward in our journey. So, man, I hope you guys have a great discussion. Talk about some of these areas that maybe that have kind of accumulated. Maybe it's the Wawa coffee, or it's the something else. But share with each other and hold each other accountable. Say, man, next week I'm going to ask you how many times you stopped at Wawa this week on the way to work. So, man, we love you guys, and we'll see you next week.
Guys.
See ya.
See you guys.
Bye-bye.